Hello and happy spring. It's time for another reading of my novel On His Majesty's Secret Service. Wearing my San Diego Zoo hat, a great zoo. This is part number 10. We left off where Colney was enjoying a cocktail party with the 13 devilishly handsome men. Fortunately for Colney, she was seated beside Belial, the American. She gazed into his gorgeous, large brown eyes and was almost overcome. The barman hovered for the second round of drinks, and everyone had the same again. Dracovic lit a cigarette, while staged conversation broke out among the four tables in the semicircular embrasure that must, during the day, be the great lookout point. 13 men, 14 counting Mr. Wood, and 2 women, well, almost 2, including Ivana. All from different continents, all from different countries. No surnames, no Christian names. The men were all in their 20s. They were excited at having a woman among them, a personable woman and a beautiful one to boot. Well, there was Ivana as well, but she was someone not quite womanlike, to say the least. Colney turned to the Russian and whimpered, "I'm terribly sorry, but I didn't catch your name." "I'm Dracovic," he answered. The voice was friendly but refined. "It must be quite an ordeal being only among chaps." "Well, it was rather a surprise, but now you're an even better surprise, a very pleasant one. It's going to be difficult getting all your names right," she continued. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Would you be so kind as to run through the field, so to speak?" The bartender came again, but she was fine and needed to keep her wits about her, so she refused another drink. "I will run through the names for you, Miss Hatch," smiled Mr. Wood. More drinks came for the others. It was apparently okay to drink, but she wondered if they were just showing a gentlemanly moderation, or if the drinks were watered down, or even virgin. After all, Mr. Wood didn't want all his handsome devils getting tipsy and sharing all his plans with their loose lips. Mr. Wood ran through the names again, starting with Ivana, and he seemed pleased with himself. While he continued his discreet roll call, Colney tried to fix the names to the faces, and otherwise add to her comprehension of this lovely but bizarre group, locked up on top of a very high Alp, indeed. The young men all seemed to share a certain basic tech complexity of manners and language, the sort of men who, in an English pub, you would find sitting at the table in the corner, commiserating together about some new video game or computer program, sipping stiff drinks and puffing rather awkwardly at a cigarette. These were not the sort of lads who would be outgoing, standing at the bar chatting up birds, and yet they were all too good-looking for techie geeks, and there were traces of many accents from all over the world. Colney turned to Fraulein Ivana. "And you, Miss Gedanya?" "Thank you, Miss Hatch. An apple juice, if you please." "So this one is the guardian, the sober, watchful mother over her beautiful boys," thought Colney to herself. Colney got up and went to the bar, wondering how she was going to plow on through this evening. She ordered a coffee and had an ingenious idea. She would, by hook or crook, become the life and soul of the party. She asked for a tumbler, and that its rim should be dipped in water. Then she picked up a paper cocktail napkin and went back to the table. She sat down. "Now," she said, as suddenly pierced with curiosity and with desire, "if we were playing for our drinks, I'll show you how we decide who should play. I learned this in the army." "You were in the army?" asked Iblis. "Yes, you know many countries in the West allow their women to fight." Rizalka, the beautiful brilliant, hummed a disapproving tut-tut. Colney ignored him as best she could, and she placed the tumbler in the middle of the table, opened the paper napkin, and spread the center tightly over the top so that it clung to the moist edge of the glass. She took her small change out of her pocket, selected a 5-centime piece, and dropped it gently on the center of the stretched tissue. "Now then," she announced, remembering that the last time she had played this game had been in the dirtiest bar in Singapore. "Who else smokes? We need 3 others with lighted cigarettes." The Russian was the only one who did. "Come watch, everyone," demanded Ivana, clapping her hands with authority. "Come over here. Come and watch, boys. Miss Hatch is making the joking game. Yeah?" The boys clustered around, chattering happily at the diversion. "What's she doing?" asked Crony. "What's going to happen?" asked Kolsu. "How do you play?" added Belial. "Now then," said Colney, feeling like the game's director on a cruise ship, "this is for who pays for the drinks. One by one you take a puff at your cigarette, knock off the ash like this, and touch the top of the paper with the lighted end. Just enough to burn a tiny hole, like this." The paper sparkled briefly. "Now each of you take a turn with Dracovic's cigarette. The point is, the paper gets like a sort of cobweb, with the coin just supported in the middle. The person who burns the last hole and makes the coin drop has to pay for the drinks." And so they passed the time until dinner. Feeling reasonably pleased with her gambit, she followed the tight pants of Belial into the dining room next door. It was 7:30. She suddenly felt exhausted with the prospect of boredom, exhausted with playing the most difficult role of her career, exhausted with the enigma of Mr. Wood and the Peas Gloria. What in the hell was the bastard up to? She sat down on the right of Ivana in the same place as they were at drinks, with Belial on his right, and Mr. Wood in his smart dinner jacket opposite her, and glumly opened her napkin. Wood had certainly spent money on his eyrie. There were 3 tables in a remote corner by the long, curved curtained window, occupied only a fraction of the space in the big, low, luxuriously appointed mock German Baroque room, ornate with candelabras suspended from the stomachs of flying cherubs, festooned with heavily gilt plasterwork, solemnized by the dark portraits of anonymous noblemen. Wood must be pretty certain he was here to stay. What was the investment? Certainly not less than £1,000,000 sterling, even assuming a fat mortgage from Swiss banks on the cost of the cable railway. To lease an Alp, put up a cable railway on mortgage, with the engineers and the local district council participating, that Colney knew was one of the latest havens for fugitive funds. If you were successful, if you and the council could bribe or bully the local farmers to allow right-of-way through their pastures, cut swaths through the tree line for the cable pylons and the ski runs, the rest was publicity and amenities for the public to eat their sandwiches.